Hello, thanks for joining us today for our South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs Wednesday webinar. Today we'll be discussing my information was breached, what now? And we'll kind of be focusing on security breaches and kind of best practices, steps that you might want to take in case some of your information was posted online or you get a notification from a business that your information was part of a breach involving their services or whatever. So we'll kind of be going through some of the free resources and things that you might want to consider doing if you get one of those notifications in the mail or email, depending on what the case may be. So now we'll kind of get into the topic that you came here for regarding security breaches and kind of the steps you might need to take if your information has been compromised or posted, on the dark web or something like that. I know a lot of times we get those notices from businesses saying our information was part of a breach. So we'll kind of go over some of those types of things throughout this presentation. So in general, a security breach is the unauthorized access to and taking of things that have personal identifying information, and the illegal use of that PII has occurred or reasonably likely to occur. And when we say PII, we're generally speaking about things like social security numbers, maybe a driver's license number, financial account numbers, credit card numbers, things like that. You may also have different types of information about your financial accounts, things that have been issued by government regulatory authorities, something like that. That could be part of that as well. And when a state agency or a business, they are required to notify consumers whenever there is a breach if they're keeping that PII. So just kind of keep that in mind, that if your information is compromised on something like that, those businesses are required by law to notify you that that breach has occurred. And they'll also notify the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs whenever there's more than 1,000 South Carolina residents that are affected by a security breach. We kind of tell people because of that number, 1,000 plus consumers in our state that have to be involved with that breach, we're not necessarily made aware of every breach that occurs, but once it hits that 1,000 South Carolina residents, we are, part of that notification by law. They have to notify our agency. And it's also kind of important to let you know that sometimes some of the businesses that have less than 1,000 people affected, they will also notify our agency. So you'll see some of those posted on our website. We post all those notifications that we receive. We post those notifications on our website. So if you're getting them in the mail or email, you can go to our website and double check that everything on that notification is legit and it is, what we're getting reported to our agency as well. And I'll show you that here in just a few moments. But kind of the important part of that is just kind of let you know that sometimes scammers do use information that is part of a breach, and they'll kind of use that information to try to scam people or try to get additional information from people. So you can kind of double check all that info by going to our website. And so far in 2024, kind of took a look at this a little bit earlier today and pulled the numbers through August 31st. So that's kind of the months that we've completed so far this year. And we have 88 breaches listed on our website so far for this year. And it involves just over 3.5 million individuals' information that's been reported in those breaches. And it's kind of important to note with that, we say 3.59 or 3.559 million with that, but that's not necessarily individual people. That's just kind of individual accounts. So some of those same people may be listed multiple times or have multiple different accounts that have been breached. I know with me, just kind of in the last year, I've had a mortgage company, a phone company involved. So, my information would be two of those, in that. So, it's not necessarily 3.5 million different people. And again, you can find all of this information on our website, consumer.sc.gov. And if you look at that identity theft scam section there that I got circled, if you highlight over that, if you're using a desktop, you'll see that security breach notices page. And once you pull that up, you'll be able to go directly to that part and take a look at those notifications that come into our office. And I've got the link right here. So if you've downloaded the PDF, you'll be able to click that link and it will pull up our website. So I'll just kind of do that real quick to show you what that will look like. Hopefully it's pulling up properly here. But you'll see that on our page, and then as you scroll down, you'll start to see the security breaches that have been filed with our agency, and it looks like currently through August 9th on that list. So again, if you've downloaded that PDF, we've got that information directly for you there. Just click that link and it'll take you straight to it. So now we'll kind of look at some industries that are commonly affected with these security breaches. The first one is education. A lot of times it's different school systems, colleges, universities, could also be kind of these school districts, things like that. Financial institutions are often targeted in security breaches, and that's going to be things like your banks, lenders, service providers, investment companies, things like that. Government agencies are also targeted with security breaches, and that might be local, county, state government, sometimes even federal government agencies. So, you know, a lot of times those happen with local and state government agencies as well. Health organizations are also a frequent target with these security breaches, and that might be something like hospitals, doctors' offices, medical supply companies, medical sales companies, pharmacies, insurance companies, things kind of like that. And just kind of think about how much information a health organization may have about you. And that's kind of why they're a frequent target, because they, you know, have a lot of details about you. So there's a lot of information that would be, you know, available if that information is compromised. Hospitality industries also target sometimes, things like hotels, restaurants, things like that. I know there was a hotel chain not too long ago that was targeted, and a number of people whose information, you know, like credit cards, things like that, that, you know, might potentially be saved in a hotel website or, you know, their internal systems. It could be a good bit of information about people as well. And retail, and that's going to be things like clothing stores, maybe an auto parts store, something like that, any kind of retail establishment that you go to either in person or online. So that's also, you know, affected industry commonly. The types of information that can be breached, again, personal data, and that's going to be things like social security numbers, maybe a tax ID number, name, address, even in some cases driver's license numbers, all that type of stuff. Financial data, and of course we're talking things like credit card numbers, debit card numbers, any kind of these like financial transaction information, details about your bank statements, things like that would be included with that financial data. They may even be credential data involved in some of the breaches, be things like your personal email address, maybe your account username or an account password. And protected health data, again, that's going to be things like your medical records, maybe diagnosis, treatment info, test results, medications you take, some of the medical chart info that would be, you know, listed on some of the websites that you might be using with your healthcare provider, that type of stuff. Again, it's a lot of information that's involved with those, especially, you know, the protected health data and those financial data, potentially a lot of different variety of information. So those are some of the types of things that, you know, could potentially be exposed in an information breach. And as always, and kind of probably why you're here, you want to know about the free things that you can do to protect yourself and your personal information. You know, I like to tell people it's not usually our fault when some of these security breaches kind of happen, but it is kind of, there are steps that we can do to protect ourselves when these things happen. So we may not be at fault for it, but there are things that we can do to kind of better protect ourselves and kind of guard ourselves when they do happen. So we'll kind of get into some of that here. And the fraud alert is the first one we'll talk about, and it is free to place. Basically, you're placing this with the credit reporting bureaus, the three major ones. You only have to call one of them or notify one of them, but you're going to report those with the credit reporting bureaus. When I say that, it's Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, those three major ones, but you'll just notify one of them that you want to put a fraud alert, and then they kind of get in contact with the other ones and let them know. And basically what this is going to do is require a business that's trying to pull your credit report or try to, kind of get those new lines of credit in your name. They're going to have to take extra steps to verify your identity. The fraud alert will allow you to kind of create new lines of credit, but it is going to require them to take additional steps to kind of verify that it is you and that you're the person trying to use that information and not somebody else who might have kind of found your financial details or your personal details and using those kind of for fraudulent purposes. And again, you just contact one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies and they'll kind of notify the other 2. It does last 1 year. If you are the victim of identity theft, you can extend that, and that extension will last for 7 years. And again, it's just kind of notifying those companies that something has happened and they need to take additional steps to verify you are who you say you are. The credit freeze is one that, when I go out and speak to people across the state, it's one of the first things I tell people. The best way to really kind of protect yourself and your information is to put a freeze on your credit report. And, again, these are all free things that you can do. It's free to place and it's free to lift. And I kind of want to stress to people that it is different than saying, freezing your credit cards. This is freezing your credit report. So it's going to be a little bit different than that. You'll still be able to use your credit cards and things like that, but it will stop people from creating new lines of credit in your name. So if somebody's trying to open a new credit card in your name and using your information to do that, they're not going to be able to go through with that process. And I kind of use my own experience with that. I put a freeze on my credit report a few years ago when I started here. And within the last year, I got a notification from Experian saying someone was trying to open up a new credit card in my name. That freeze kicked in, stopped that person from doing that. So, it really did what it was supposed to do, what it's meant to do. And it stopped somebody who wasn't me from opening that new line of credit in my name and using my information. So that's really kind of the great protection of this type of thing. Again, it's free to do. And you can thaw it or lift it whenever you want to apply for new credit. Again, kind of my experience with this is I needed to buy a new car. So when I was ready to do that, I put that thaw in place. I did it that morning, went to the car dealership, was able to apply for that credit. And once that whole process was over, put the freeze back in place and it kind of protects that credit once again. So you just kind of thaw it or lift it while you need to apply for new credit. And then once you're kind of done, you're putting that freeze back in place and keeping other people from using your information to do that. And it's really kind of protecting yourself. If you're not actively searching for credit or trying to open new lines of credit, it's a great way to prevent other people from doing that in your name. And with the freeze, you will have to contact each of the 3 credit reporting agencies. Again, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. You'll have to get in touch with each one of those 3 and put the freeze on each one of those reports individually. It doesn't take very long to do. I think it took me about 5 minutes or so to go through with each one of those 3 credit reporting agencies on their website and putting that in place. So in general, anybody can do this. It is kind of one of the mandates under federal law where you'll be able to go in and put the freeze in place. And again, you have to do that with each other credit reporting agencies, and you can do it by certified letter. You can go onto their websites or you can give them a call. And within 1 business day, if you're doing it online or on the phone, they'll put that freeze in place or lift it for you. Process takes a little bit longer, as you can imagine, if you're doing those notifications by mail. So it might take 3 business days if you're notifying by mail that you want the freeze in place. And they're going to send you confirmation of that request. So they'll provide a PIN or a password, a way for you to get in and remove that freeze. And they're going to kind of verify some of that information with you kind of when you're putting that in place the first time. And again, they're going to provide you all the ways to remove that. And all of this is free. So you'll be able to go in, put that password in, and put the thaw in place or remove it, freeze it temporarily or lift it temporarily. So you can kind of do all of that with that PIN and password. So it is kind of important to make sure that you keep those passwords secure and know how to get into those accounts. And they'll also kind of notify you of this process too while it's in place. Kind of important to notify you as well. Somebody's trying to get in there and take that information, you'll get a notification from them as well that somebody's trying to use it. So again, this is kind of a great tool that you'll be able to take advantage of. And again, to thaw or temporarily remove it, you can go onto their websites, you can call them or you can mail them. You can do it for a specified time. I know when I did this the last time, I was able to just do it for a day. So the day that I needed to apply for credit, the thaw was lifted, and then it automatically kicked back in at a certain time. And if you're notifying by phone or online, the credit reporting agencies within an hour should be able to lift that freeze or thaw it for you. If you're doing it by mail, it will take 3 business days. But I know in my case, I did it on the way to the car dealership or right before I left. I, put that thaw in place. By the time I got to the dealership and sat down with somebody to kind of look at getting that credit approved for the car, by the time I sat down in their office with that, it was already thawed. So it's a pretty quick process if you're doing it online or by the phone. And again, you'll have to kind of do those individually. You'll have to go either to each individual website or call them. And again, 1 hour to lift it, 1 hour to thaw it. And they'll also kind of put it in place within an hour too if you need to put it back in place. But all of that is listed there. If you are in the military, there are kind of different alerts that you can put in place. There is an active duty alert for military members, those who have to report for service. You can put it in place for a year and it can be renewed. And again, it's just kind of putting those things in place to let businesses know that they have to take extra steps to make sure that it is the person that they claim to be. And it's also going to remove that person from all the pre-screened offers that you might get in the mail. So it's a good tool to kind of take advantage of if you're a military member. And again, it's just going to kind of put those additional tools in place to make sure that anybody applying for credit in your name is actually who they say they are. And it's also going to provide some notifications if there's changes or additions to a credit file. So if somebody's applied for a new line of credit, those things will be kind of notified to you. And you can kind of learn more about that by contacting the credit reporting agencies if you need to, but they will kind of put those in place. And if any changes of address, payments are made, or payments are not made, they're late, something like that, if there's any kind of bankruptcy information, something like that, you'll get those notifications sent to your email or text message, kind of however you've set those up. There are steps you can take to kind of protect your child's identity if your child's information has been breached. And we'll kind of go over some of those, but the protected consumer is usually what we kind of say for somebody who's age 16 or younger. The phrase can also be used with incapacitated adults as well, and you can kind of place a different kind of freeze for those protected consumers. Again, it's all free, and I've got a couple of documents that we'll show you here in a few minutes that will kind of outline the process a little bit more or help you kind of walk through that. But again, it's going to be free to place, and the process for it is a little bit different. You're going to have to send kind of some written confirmation, specific information to the credit reporting agencies, and it's a lot more in detail process. So really you'll kind of need to go to those 3 credit reporting agencies and their websites individually and kind of see their processes, because each one has kind of a little bit different tools and ways that you need to go through it. And they are going to ask you for a lot of information that is kind of specific to your child, obviously social security number, things like that, but they'll also need, a lot of cases, copies of your birth certificate or their birth certificate, copies of the child's birth certificate. You might have to provide some information to kind of prove that you're their legal guardian, things like that. So that process is going to be a little bit different and maybe a little bit more involved than, you know, the credit freeze for an adult. One thing that you might want to do too before you kind of get involved with that process is ask for a manual search of that child's credit report. And ideally, you know, that manual search wouldn't find anything, because if they're under 16, they shouldn't really have that credit history. But if that manual search does pull up, you know, signs of kind of an active credit line, that would be kind of the signs of identity theft. So if you're finding things like that that are pulling up, you'll want to kind of talk with the credit reporting agency, see what those items were, and can start that process of challenging them and letting them notify, you know, those creditors that is a child that's involved. And again, we're going to give you some links to that. We've got a lot of different links on our website that will kind of walk you through that process. Again, it's going to outline a little bit more details about the Protect Consumer Freeze, some things you need to know when you're kind of going through those steps to look for child identity theft. We've got an entire webinar that just goes over that entire process, and that is on our YouTube channel. So we've got those links for you right there. So again, if that's something that you're needing to take advantage of, or something that, you know, you're concerned about your child's information being part of a breach, those 3 tools are available to you to go through and kind of walk you through that process of steps that you might need to take to protect their information. Free credit reports. We recommend everybody use annualcreditreport.com when searching your credit report or pulling up those credit reports. And the reason we recommend that one is because it's the site that's authorized by federal law to provide you your free credit report. So they're not using your information or your data to kind of target you with other services, or, you know, selling that data to other advertisers, things like that. Some of the free credit report sites that are out there, you're probably getting that information for free, but that company that's pulling that information for you, they're making money somehow. So that's either from ads or data or some other type of way. So really, annualcreditreport.com is the website that we recommend, and there's the phone number for you on the screen there. And by law, they're required to offer you 1 free credit report a year. They're doing 1 free credit report every week now for individuals. It's important to note that that doesn't contain your credit score, but it will give you all the information that you need to go through. So you're going to want to look over it to make sure everything is accurate and that everything belongs to you. So if there's any addresses, phone numbers, credit information, like if there's accounts on there that you're not recognizing, you'll want to report those to those agencies. Usually there's just a little button on the screen if you're using their website where you can flag it for them and then kind of let them know what's going on, what's wrong with that. You can kind of report those errors. And then you might need to take steps, you know, if it looks like it's the sign of identity theft, if there's, you know, lots of accounts that aren't yours or don't belong to you, or the, you know, dollar amounts don't match up to what they should be. So you want to kind of take a look at all of those. We recommend doing it at least once a year. Again, you can do it every week. There's really not very many occasions where you would want to look over those every week, but you know, that opportunity is there to kind of check those regularly and make sure that somebody's not using your information. And we have all those websites and phone numbers for you. Again, if you've downloaded the sheet, we've got those for you as well on this PDF. My Social Security, their website is a good one and will allow you to manage your Social Security benefits. And kind of the thing to do, even if you're not kind of near that age of getting Social Security checks, you want to go ahead and set up your own account. Kind of the reason to do that is you want to do it before somebody else does it. So if your Social Security number and those, addresses and things like that are out there on the dark web or whatever, you'll want to go to ssa.gov and /myaccount, and you can set up a social security account. And again, kind of the reason to do that is you want to do it before somebody else does it and then starts kind of using your information to manage your social security benefits. We also recommend kind of setting up account alerts and login protections on your accounts. So those account alerts will be a lot of the things that you can do to monitor your spending, things like that. Login protections be things like two-factor authentication, things like that. We'll kind of get into those details here as we get moving. Kind of one of the big things to do is create and use strong, unique passwords, especially if your information has been breached. If you're getting notifications about a breach involving, your phone carrier or your mortgage company or your credit card or whatever, you'll want to go into that account and make sure you set up a new password. And then it's a unique password, something that's not being used on multiple accounts of yours. And kind of the reason for that is, you don't want somebody to get one account password and then be able to use all of your passwords with that one account, or be able to get into all of your accounts with that one password. And you want them to be at least 12 characters. Generally, we kind of say a longer password is stronger. And use combinations of upper, lowercase letters, symbols, anything you can do to make it complicated. A lot of cybersecurity experts will tell you random is the best way to go. So, not really words or anything like that, just kind of random combinations of uppercase, lowercase letters, symbols, numbers, anything you can do to make it complicated. And you may want to consider a password manager. They can kind of help you monitor if there are breaches that involved your passwords. They can encrypt those passwords, and basically you're using one password that to get into that password manager, and then you're using that manager to kind of organize all your other information, help you get into your accounts and keep things secure. You can go to staysafeonline.org with that link that we have there. They're kind of a combination of different cybersecurity experts, and they have a lot of good information on kind of things to look for whenever you're considering a password manager. So that is a good link to kind of take a look at if you're kind of on the fence of using a password manager or not. Two-factor authentication is one of the things that the FBI tells us is the kind of #1 cybersecurity tool that people should be using. And it's just going to make it twice as hard to get into an account. If somebody's got your password, they're not going to be able to get into your account because they're going to need that extra step to be able to get into it. And that might be something you have, like a passcode that gets sent to you through an authentication app, or maybe it's a text message, something like that, or you can use something that you are. So that might be fingerprint on your phone or face recognition, any of those types of things that your accounts might have. That's just kind of that extra step to kind of help protect your account. And again, it's going to keep people out. If they get the password, they may not be able to get in because they don't have that little passcode that's been sent to your text message. And keep in mind with security questions, if you're setting those up to be able to kind of log back into accounts, you want to use stuff that's not available in the public records or online. So, things that might be on social media or something that, might be listed on a data website of, public records, like, your home address or something like that. So you kind of want to avoid those questions that might be a zip code, mother's maiden name, birthplace, anything like that. It's also kind of a good reminder of practicing good social media safety. So anytime you're posting stuff on social media, kind of keep in mind that some of that information might be easily available to search with your name, and a hacker could find out additional details about you to kind of help them figure out your security question. So it's just something else to kind of keep in mind as you're considering those types of things. And don't give all your information away. If you're on a website and the merchant is requesting more data than you feel comfortable sharing, you don't have to shop there. You don't have to use that website. So if they're asking for too much information, don't use that site. And again, you may only want to fill out the information that's required at a checkout. Maybe also don't want to save your payment information in those profiles. So, a lot of times you'll be able to save, your credit card information or something whenever you go to that restaurant, go payment checkout on their website. But if you don't save that information, it's likely not stored there and probably a little bit safer than just keeping that information out there for, somebody hacks that website or whatever to be able to get that information about you. Kind of our main takeaways is just kind of keep in mind, and this is the frustrating thing that we tell people, no one security method is 100% safe. But if you're kind of combining as many things as you can, it's going to make you, increasingly more safe, and it's going to protect your information kind of a little bit better. So just kind of keep in mind, the more security measures you combine, it's going to protect your information a little bit more. And again, the more security measures, the higher the protection. And just because you get a security breach notice does not mean you're the victim of identity theft. And that's kind of one thing that is important to note. So, that information may be out there and you want to take steps to protect yourself, like that freezing your credit report. You want to do that before somebody can actually use that information. So take action now to secure yourself if you haven't done so. We've got a couple of other tips for you. Kind of, if you forget the rest, again, consider a security freeze, possibly a fraud alert. That's going to be a great deal of protection for you. Again, that security freeze is going to prevent people from using your credit report or your credit information to open new accounts. So that's going to give you a great deal of protection. So if your information is potentially out there, it's a great tool to have to be able to kind of lock that up so nobody else can use your information to create those accounts. Monitor your statements, make sure they're arriving, make sure everything on them is correct. Again, kind of keep a look too on your credit reports at least once a year, if not a little bit more frequent. You want to make sure everything on it belongs to you and that everything's adding up. A lot of times we hear from people who aren't monitoring all their financial statements, and they'll find out, somebody's been spending money, a year or two after it's happened. You want to take action as soon as you can, so make sure you're monitoring those statements for anything that may not be yours. And defend against scams. Scammers sometimes use information in security breaches to kind of make their requests seem legit. So they may start targeting you with emails, text messages, even pop-up windows, things like that, that are going to ask for personal information, want you to verify different types of stuff. I know we hear from people all the time, so they get phone calls from people who know a great deal of information about them. Sometimes security breaches are how they get that information, unfortunately. And then they use those details to kind of make themselves seem believable, and they'll target you with some other type of scam, which could then create, even larger losses and this type of stuff. So really kind of guard yourselves against scams. And we have our Ditch the Pitch scam guide on our website too, that can kind of help you learn the signs of a variety of different types of scams too, that will help you protect yourself. If you're interested in a credit monitoring service, that may be something that is helpful for you, but just kind of keep in mind too, a lot of times with the services, kind of all they're doing is using things that you can do yourself, and they're usually free services. Like we said, they're kind of using those credit reports and things like that to kind of sees what's going on with your activity. So if you're actively looking at your credit reports often or frequently, that might be just as good of a tool as using a monitoring service. I know sometimes if you're a breach, they will offer those monitoring services for free for a certain amount of time. So, if it's free, that might be something you want to take advantage of if that's just easier for you. I know I've done that with some of the breaches that have come through that have involved my information, signed up for those free monitoring services that have been offered through those companies. That is one tool you can do, but just kind of know if it gets to a point where they're, want you to pay or anything like that, just kind of know a lot of the stuff that they do is free in general, such as monitoring your credit report. And if you're paying for a service, you want to just kind of research that company, make sure that they're trustworthy and that they're going to fit your needs. And we've got our information. Again, this booklet is available to download on our PDFs there on the right side through GoToWebinar. And that's our How to Prevent Identity Theft guide. And that's going to give you a lot of the resources and tools that we've discussed through this presentation. And if you think you're the victim of identity theft, you can always call our agency. Again, we have an identity theft unit that what they do all day is kind of look at these types of things and walk people through the process. They've got a couple different little checklists that they'll go through, and they can walk you through that and look at what type of identity theft has happened and the steps that you might need to take. You can go to consumer.sc.gov and again, click that little How Do I button, and you can report identity theft to our office. And this is kind of a look at the identity theft toolkit, which is part of the items that they use and they send to identity theft victims. It's also available on our website, consumer.sc.gov. But again, our identity theft unit can kind of take a look at that with you, walk you through that process, and they're going to send you information that's kind of specific to the type of identity theft that you may be experiencing. Do have a couple questions here. I'm trying to get my screen to cooperate with me, so apologize for that. I did have somebody who asked, said that they were notified by their phone company, internet company about a hacking. And one of the things they were advised was to go to the IRS website, set it up so nobody could file a tax return using their number. And they wanted to know, it says they were using a secondary site and there was a lot of personal information. So they wanted to know about security with that site. I'd have to know which site exactly they were sending you to, but if you go to irs.gov, they've got all their information to set up those accounts there. It'll send you to irs.gov/your-account. But if you start out at irs.gov, that will kind of get you started on that process. And then they have a link down there on that site. It is going to require you to set up what they call an ID.me account. And you are going to have to provide some personal identifying information, such as a photo of a government ID in order to do that. So that might be kind of that personal information that you weren't really comfortable with sharing. Again, I'd have to know specifically which site you were doing, but you know, a lot of that information on that irs.gov website, it will kind of require that government photo and some of that type of stuff. So just kind of the important thing to know is maybe start out by going to irs.gov yourself and not necessarily following those links that might have been sent to you. So that would be kind of helpful to you as well. All right, we've got somebody who says, I locked my credit file with Experian. Do I need to do the same with the other two credit reporting agencies? I would say yes, and it's pretty easy process to put that freeze in place. And it's kind of important too, I didn't really mention credit lock. A lot of times they will use the phrase credit lock with something, and that's usually a service that's very specific to that company or that credit reporting agency, and that is different than the credit freeze. A lot of it may be the same, but the credit freeze is kind of mandated by federal law, and they're very specific about the types of things that have to be associated with freeze. So I would recommend just kind of taking another look at that, make sure that you've actually put the credit freeze in place, and then do the same thing at the other two agencies. So you want to make sure all three of those major credit reporting agencies are involved with that freeze. So you want to do that at Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Somebody asked about their children being claimed as dependent on somebody else's taxes. There looks like those children are now adults. Is there anything additional we need besides the credit freeze and frequent credit reports? Kind of the simple answer would be just kind of making sure you're taking a look at those credit reports and everything is actual them and not somebody else's information. So those signs of identity theft aren't showing up with that, and kind of keep that process in line. The fraud alert might also be something that you want to use if you know specifically that there was identity theft that was happening there. So just kind of keep a word on that. Somebody's asking how can they report spam and scam calls that are coming in. One of the best things you can do are use those features on your phone that are reporting those items, reporting spam or scam. Sometimes they're worded a little different depending on what type of phone you have, especially if it's a mobile device. I know Google and iPhone both have kind of those report spam features or report call, suspicious call. With those when they're coming in, best kind of advice is not to answer them or interact with them at all, and use those little features that are built into the phones to report those. And those are going to notify the phone providers that something's going on with those numbers. A lot of times if there's multiple reports of those same numbers or those same things that are coming through, those providers can then kind of take steps to help filter out those calls and make sure that those people sending those are kind of cracked down on. So that would help you a good bit. Somebody asked about credit monitoring. Again, they were saying that when there was a breach, they've been told that the companies involved should be paying for that, not the consumer. That's generally the rule. Usually there are some timelines on that. Usually I think it's a year that they'll offer that credit monitoring. So again, that may be something you want to consider if they're offering it for free. If you're being asked to pay for it, you might want to look and just kind of make that decision if it's worth the money or not. Again, a lot of those things might be something that you're able to do for free on your own. And again, kind of monitoring your credit report would be kind of the big thing with that. That would help you. We've got a question here about a PIN with Experian. The PIN never arrived and they're going to need to change it. You might need to contact Experian directly. I'll see what we can find out for you. I know it can be a pretty lengthy or hard process to go through sometimes if the PIN was not sent to the right place, or if you lost it, or whatever that condition can be. You may have to go kind of through a lengthy process with them in order to get that resent to you. I think they usually send those in the mail. I'm not 100% certain about that, but again, if you go directly to Experian, they have the process that should be able to kind of help you out with that. Somebody was asking about a credit card fraud detected on their account. I'm assuming it was $1.25. I would still be concerned about that. I know a lot of times those are kind of those test things that those scammers and things like that, these crooks are using whenever these small $1 charges come through. It could be the first of many charges. So I would definitely keep an eye on that. Report it to your credit card provider, let them know that it was a charge you didn't make, and kind of go from there. They may have some additional steps for you. I know sometimes if it keeps kind of escalating, they'll change your credit card number and all that altogether. But I would be concerned about $1.25 just because it, could be the start of many transactions. And I think kind of what they're doing is testing it out to make sure it works and hoping that you weren't really paying attention for $1.25, and then it can escalate. We thank you for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar, and we hope you'll be back with us next week. Thank you very much. We'll see you then.